What if the Baybayin revival we covered in our last video wasn't unique? What if right now, simultaneously across 7 different island nations, ancient writing systems that were supposed to be dead are waking up? Today we're talking about the lost scripts of Southeast Asia, the Lontara of Sulawesi, the Batak scripts of Sumatra, the Kulitan of Pampanga, ancient indigenous writing systems that all descend from the same ancestor, all nearly erased by colonization, and all coming back at the same time. We're covering the history, the science of why they're reviving simultaneously, a script used to literally predict the date of someone's death, and what this constellation of awakening scripts tells us about colonialism, identity, and cultural memory in the 21st century. Every part of this matters. Don't go anywhere. Alright, before we go back in time, which we absolutely will, I want to show you something happening right now, because I think it changes everything. Over the last 10 years, writing systems that colonial historians literally classified as extinct are coming back. Not slowly, not in small academic circles, loudly, publicly, on social media, in schools, on people's bodies. In Sulawesi, the Lontara script is being taught in community workshops attended by hundreds of people weekly. In Sumatra, Batak scripts are showing up in art installations and tattoo studios from Jakarta to Amsterdam. In Pampanga, in the Philippines, Kulitan characters are being carved into official city street signs by the local government. When multiple distinct cultures on multiple distinct islands, separated by hundreds of miles of ocean, all independently begin reclaiming their ancient writing systems within the same decade, that is a signal something is happening. And understanding what is happening and why it's happening now requires going back, way back, to a single ancient script in India that started one of the most extraordinary chains of cultural transmission in human history. Now, if you watched the Baybayin episode, some of this origin story will be familiar, but today we're going wider and we're going deeper because the full picture of this script family is something most historians have never presented as a connected story. These aren't separate, isolated revivals. They're branches of the same tree waking up at the same time. And once you see the family resemblance, once you see how these scripts are cousins, you will never look at Southeast Asian history the same way again. To understand why all of these scripts are related, you need to understand one ancient Indian script that most people outside of linguistics have never heard of, Brahmi. It was used in India from at least the 3rd century BCE. Some scholars push it further back, and it is the direct or indirect ancestor of virtually every writing system in South Asia and Southeast Asia. Thai, Khmer, Burmese, Sinhalese, Tibetan, Javanese, Balinese, Baybayin, all of them trace their lineage back to Brahmi. The mechanism of transmission was trade. Indian maritime merchants, religious teachers, and diplomatic envoys spread across Southeast Asia over centuries, carrying not just goods but an entire cultural infrastructure, language, religion, governance models, and writing. This process, which historians call Indianization, wasn't a conquest. It was a gradual, largely voluntary adoption by Southeast Asian kingdoms who found Indian cultural tools prestigious and useful. And one of the most useful tools was the ababida, that elegant syllabic writing system where each character already contains a built-in vowel. Now, as Brahmi-derived writing spread across the archipelagos and peninsulas of Southeast Asia, it didn't stay the same. Each island, each language community, each culture took the framework and bent it to fit their own phonology, their own aesthetics, their own materials. The result, over 1,000 years, was a stunning diversity of related but distinct scripts, all recognizably cousins, but each one uniquely itself. Think of it like the Romance languages. Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, all descended from Latin. You can see the family resemblance, but you can't read Spanish if you only know Italian. Same thing here. Baybayin and Lontara share a common ancestor, but they look different, they work differently, and they encode different sounds for different languages. They are cousins who grew up on different islands. Let's start with Lontara, because Lontara has a special place in this story. The Bugis people of Sulawesi who created it are almost certainly the people who handed the concept of writing to the Philippines in the first place, which means Lontara is, in a very real sense, Baybayin's older sibling. The Lontara script is named after the lontar palm because that's what it was traditionally written on. Palm leaves inscribed with the stylus, rolled and stored. Like Baybayin, it's in abugida, but visually completely different. Where Baybayin has flowing curved organic characters, Lontara is angular and geometric. The characters are nicknamed four-cornered letters because of their distinctive diamond-like shapes. 23 characters total, and like Baybayin, Lontara traditionally omits final consonants, leaving them implied by context, the same linguistic fingerprint on a different island in a different hand. But here's what makes Lontara extraordinary beyond just its form. The Bugis people used it to create one of the most remarkable bodies of literature in all of Southeast Asia. The La Galigo, an epic poem written in Lontara script, is one of the longest literary works in human history. Scholars estimate the complete La Galigo contains around 6,000 folio pages. For comparison, Homer's Iliad runs to about 500 pages. The La Galigo is 12 times that length. It tells the story of Bugis creation mythology, the descent of gods to Earth, the birth of human civilization, and it was written in a script that most of the world has never heard of. The La Galigo was added to UNESCO's Memory of the World Register in 2011, the same register that includes the Magna Carta and the Diary of Anne Frank. A 6,000-page Bugis epic poem in a script most people can't name. When Dutch colonization intensified across the Indonesian archipelago through the 17th and 18th centuries, Lontara faced the same slow economic erasure that Baybayin faced in the Philippines. Not a dramatic burning, a gradual replacement. Latin script became the language of administration, commerce, and advancement. The same colonial playbook run on a different island by a different European power. By the 20th century, active Lontara literacy had become rare, limited to ceremonial purposes and traditional literature specialists. But right now, in Makassar, the capital of South Sulawesi, young Bugis people in their 20s and 30s who grew up writing in Latin script are attending Lontara workshops every week. People whose ancestors wrote the longest epic poem in Southeast Asian history are learning that script for the very first time. And for many of them, that first session changes something permanently. Now we go to Sumatra, and I want to warn you, this next part of the story gets a little dark in the best possible way. The Batak peoples of North Sumatra developed not one, not two, but 5 distinct writing systems. 5! All associated with a different Batak ethnic subgroup, the Toba, Karo, Pakpak, Simulungun, and Mandailing peoples, all descended from the same Brahmi root, all adapted to the specific sounds of each group's dialect, all written on materials as diverse as tree bark, bamboo, and the bones of large animals. Yes, you heard that right. Animal bones. The Batak wrote on bones. But the most extraordinary Batak writing tradition isn't what they wrote on, it's what they wrote. The Batak traditional healers and spiritual leaders, called Datu, created manuscripts called Pustaha. These accordion-folded books made from tree bark recorded medical recipes, protective spells, astronomical calculations, and divination procedures. And one of the primary uses of Pustaha was predicting the date, time, and manner of a person's death, and then prescribing rituals to potentially postpone it. A trained Batak Datu could consult a Pustaha manuscript and tell you when you were going to die. Whether or not you believe that system worked is beside the point. The point is that an entire cosmological and medical knowledge system was encoded in a script. The script wasn't just a communication tool, it was a container for an entire way of understanding the universe. You couldn't separate the writing from the worldview. They were the same thing. When Dutch Christian missionaries arrived in the Batak Highlands in the 19th century, Ludwig Ingvar Nommensen began his work among the Toba Batak in 1861. The colonial Christian establishment viewed Pustaha manuscripts as instruments of witchcraft and pagan superstition. Many were confiscated, some were burned, others were sent to European museums, where they sat in archives for 100 years, classified as curiosities, studied by a small handful of anthropologists. Today, about 200 complete Pustaha manuscripts survive in collections across the Netherlands, Germany, and Indonesia. And right now, Batak scholars working with digital scans of those European museum collections are painstakingly transcribing, translating, and teaching the 5 Batak scripts to a new generation. Because inside those manuscripts, a complete traditional pharmacological knowledge system, herbal treatments, astronomical calculations, medical observations, things that modern ethnobotanists are genuinely interested in. The script they once called witchcraft might contain useful medicine. Okay, quick pause right here. We just talked about 2 scripts. Lontara, used for epic poetry and maritime navigation, and Batak, used for medicine, magic, and predicting death. 2 radically different relationships between a culture and its writing system. So here's my question for the comments right now. What do you think writing is actually for? Is it primarily a practical tool? Contracts, records, navigation? Or is it a container for a civilization's entire worldview? Can it be both? Drop your answer below. And if you're Filipino, Bugis, Batak, or from anywhere in Southeast Asia, I especially want to hear from you. Comment right now. Alright, we're going back to the Philippines now, but not to Baybayin, to a script that Baybayin's own revival has, somewhat ironically, pushed further into the shadow. Kulitan is the indigenous script of the Kapampangan people, the people of Pampanga, a province in central Luzon with one of the most distinct cultural and linguistic identities in the Philippines. Kapampangan is not a Tagalog dialect. It is a fully distinct Philippine language with its own grammar, vocabulary, and history, and it had its own writing system long before the Spanish arrived. Kulitan is an abugida like Baybayin. It shares the same Brahmi ancestral roots, but it looks different. The character shapes are distinct, and it's traditionally written top to bottom rather than left to right. It uses what the Kapampangan call indong sulat, mother characters, which give birth to anak sulat, or offspring characters, when diacritics are added. The script itself has family built into its grammar. Here's the uncomfortable truth that Kulitan's advocates have been pointing out for years. When the Philippine Congress debated House Bill 1022, the proposal to make Baybayin the national writing system, Kulitan was not included. Neither was Hanunoho. Neither was Tagbanwa. The bill focused almost exclusively on Baybayin, which is primarily associated with Tagalog, the language of Manila, the language of Philippine national media, the language that has historically dominated in official contexts. Kulitan scholar Robin Tantinko has argued publicly that a Baybayin-only national script policy would represent a continuation of colonial-style cultural centralization, just with a Filipino flavor instead of a Spanish one. Instead of Spain imposing Latin on everyone, Manila-centric culture would be imposing Baybayin on everyone. The mechanism is different. The dynamic is the same. That is not a comfortable argument. It is also not a wrong argument. What Kulitan's story tells us is that these revivals are not simple feel-good celebrations. They are live political negotiations about whose identity gets recognized, whose history gets told, and whose writing gets taught in schools. And yet, despite the lack of congressional spotlight, Kulitan's revival is genuinely happening. City governments are installing official Kulitan street signs. Local schools are teaching it. There are Kulitan tattoo artists, Kulitan calligraphy communities, Kulitan social media accounts. The revival doesn't need permission from Manila to be real. It just needs the people of Pampanga to keep writing in it. And they are. So here's the question that's been underneath this entire video. Why now? Why are all of these scripts waking up in the same decade? Let me show you exactly why. Force 1. Digitization of colonial archives. For most of the 20th century, the primary physical evidence of these scripts, the manuscripts, the grammar guides, the colonial era documentation, sat in European museums and archives in Amsterdam, in Berlin, in Madrid, geographically inaccessible to the communities they belonged to. A Batak scholar in North Sumatra who wanted to study a 17th century Pustaha would need to fly to the Netherlands, obtain research credentials, navigate a foreign archival system, not a realistic path for most people. Then the digitization movement of the 2010s changed everything. Museums began photographing and uploading their collections. The British Library digitized tens of thousands of Southeast Asian manuscripts. Suddenly, a Kapampangan high school student in Pampanga could pull up a 400-year-old Kulitan document on their phone. A Bugis teenager in Makassar could read the Galigo online. The physical barrier between a community and its own written heritage collapsed almost overnight. Force 2. Social media as a cultural amplification engine. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube turned script calligraphy into a visual medium at exactly the right moment. An abugida written in brushstroke calligraphy is objectively gorgeous visual content. The flowing curves of Baybayin, the diamond-shaped geometry of Lontara, the vertical elegance of Kulitan. These are beautiful things to look at, and social media algorithms reward beautiful visual content with massive organic reach. A Filipino calligrapher painting Baybayin brushstroke video on TikTok can reach 1 million people in 48 hours. A Bugis artist pointing Lontara text on canvas can go viral in Jakarta and be shared across the diaspora in Amsterdam by the following morning. The scripts that were nearly erased by colonial print culture are being resurrected by post-print digital visual culture. Force 3. The global decolonization discourse. The academic and political conversation about decolonization, which has accelerated significantly since around 2015, has given millions of people a framework and a vocabulary for something they already felt but couldn't fully articulate. The sense that their cultural heritage wasn't just lost, but taken, that its loss wasn't accidental, but structural, and that reclaiming it is not nostalgia, but resistance. When you give a young Filipino American in Los Angeles the language to say, "My ancestor's script was replaced through colonial incentive structures," rather than just, "I don't know where my culture went," that is a fundamentally different emotional posture. It creates agency, it creates purpose, it creates community. These three forces, digitization of archives, social media amplification, and decolonization as framework, hit Southeast Asian script communities at the same time. That's not a coincidence, that's a confluence, and the result is what we're seeing right now. Here's something that will reframe the entire history you've heard today in one image. Look at what happened to each of these scripts in sequence. Baybayin in the Philippines, thriving pre-colonial literacy, Spanish colonization from 1565, missionary use as a communication bridge, gradual economic replacement with Latin script, near extinction by the 18th century. Lontara in Sulawesi, thriving maritime literature, Dutch colonization intensifying through the 17th and 18th centuries, gradual replacement with Latin script, marginalization by the 20th century. Batak scripts in Sumatra, functioning ritual and medical knowledge system, Dutch Christian missionary activity from the 19th century, classification as witchcraft, confiscation and archiving in European museums, near total loss of active literacy. The pattern is not subtle. The same colonial playbook was run on multiple distinct cultures across multiple distinct island groups, across 2 different European empires across 3 centuries. The colonial playbook did not account for copper and bark and palm leaves stored in European museum basements for 100 years, and the internet, and the children of diaspora communities who grew up between 2 worlds and decided to reach back toward one of them. The colonizers archived their own undoing. They documented what they were replacing. They stored what they tried to erase. And now those archives are being cracked open by the very descendants of the people whose writing systems those archives were supposed to supersede. History, it turns out, has a very long memory, and history has a very specific sense of irony. And there's one more layer to this pattern that deserves to be named, because colonialism doesn't always end when the colonizer leaves. Sometimes the newly independent nation inherits the same centralizing habits, just with a different center. Kulitan didn't just get overshadowed by Spanish colonial Latin script, it got overshadowed again inside its own independent country by the dominance of Tagalog and Baybayin. That's what Robin Tontingo calls secondary marginalization. First, an external power erases your script, then an internal power assumes that its dominant script speaks for everyone. The Kapampangan people have been through 2 erasures, one colonial, one post-colonial, and they are pushing back against both of them simultaneously. That's not just a revival, that is a double reclamation, and it is happening block by block, street sign by street sign, in the city of Angeles right now. So let's bring it all home. What does it mean that all of these scripts are waking up at the same time? I think it means that cultural memory is more resilient than colonialism assumed, that the process of erasing a writing system, even if it succeeds in practical terms, even if you achieve near total functional extinction, doesn't erase the need the script was meeting, the need to see your own language in a visual form that feels like it belongs to you, the need to read your ancestors' words in their own letters, the need for a writing system that was shaped by your culture rather than imposed on it. That need goes underground. It waits. And then, when conditions change, when archives open, when the internet arrives, when the political vocabulary catches up to the emotional reality, it comes back up. Not as nostalgia, as necessity. Here's the thing that strikes me most about all 4 scripts we covered today, and about Baybayin from the previous video. None of them are trying to replace the Latin alphabet. None of the communities involved are petitioning to have their children stop learning English or Indonesian or Filipino in school. The revival movements are not about going backward, they are about going wider, about having more than one visual identity, about being able to write your name in the letters your ancestors used, not instead of the letters you use today, but alongside them. What's being built now in the calligraphy workshops of Makassar, in the university libraries of Medan, in the street sign projects of Angeles City, in the tattoo studios of Los Angeles, is not a museum. It's a living bilingualism, a written bilingualism, and that is genuinely new in the history of these scripts. And I keep coming back to something that I think is genuinely one of the most beautiful and ironic facts in the entire history of colonialism. The colonizers archived their own undoing. They documented what they were replacing. They cataloged what they were erasing. They stored the manuscripts they could have destroyed, and they shipped them to European museums where they sat, undisturbed, for 100 years, until the very people those archives were meant to supersede came to find them, digitized them, translated them, taught them to their children. The colonial project had a fatal flaw built into its own methodology. It was too thorough. It preserved too much. It documented too carefully. And what it documented was the evidence of everything it was taking. Now, I mentioned earlier there's one more script in this family, one that survived colonization not by going underground, not by being archived in a museum basement, but by doing something nobody expected. It hid in plain sight, embedded inside a writing system the colonial powers thought they had completely replaced, used daily by millions of people who had no idea they were looking at it. That script and that story is where this series goes next. And honestly, when I first learned it, I genuinely had to stop and sit with it for a minute. Make sure you're subscribed and the bell is on, because that one drops soon. Before we get to the CTAs, I want to say one more thing. Because across every script we've covered in this series, Baybayin, Lontara, Batak, Kulitan, there's a human fact that keeps stopping me. The people who created these scripts, who use them every day, who pass them to their children, they couldn't have known what was coming. They couldn't have known a colonizing power would arrive and spend centuries systematically replacing what they built. They wrote in languages their ancestors chose, in characters their culture shaped, on materials they knew would rot. They had no way of knowing that their words would need to survive. They had no way of knowing that someday, someone on the other side of the planet, a descendant they would never meet, in a world they couldn't imagine, would be desperately grateful that a few manuscripts survived. They couldn't have known, and today, in tattoo studios and calligraphy workshops and university libraries and elementary school classrooms across Southeast Asia and its diaspora, the descendants of those writers are writing again, in the same characters, reaching back across hundreds of years of silence, and writing anyway. All right, that is it for today's deep dive into the lost scripts of Southeast Asia. Lontara, Batak, Kulitan, and the three forces behind the simultaneous revival. Before you close this tab, two things. First, share this video. If this gave you something, a new perspective, a fact you want to text someone, a feeling you weren't expecting, hit that share button and send it to one person who would care about this story. That single action matters more to this channel than anything else you can do. Second, comments. Your question, out of everything we covered today, which script surprised you most? And what do you want us to cover in this series next? I'm building the editorial calendar based on your answers. And two more quick things. If you're new here, welcome. This is what we do. Deep dives into the history most textbooks skip, every single week. Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss one. And if you learned something today, smash that like button. It takes 2 seconds, it helps the algorithm surface this video to more people, and it genuinely matters. Every single click counts. And one last thing before I let you go. You notice the unlabeled node, the script that hid in plain sight inside a writing system the colonizers thought they had completely replaced. Here is the only hint I'll give you before that video drops. You have almost certainly seen this script before. You just didn't know you were looking at it. That's all I'm saying. Subscribe, bell, don't miss it. We'll see you in the next one. And hey, wherever you are right now, there is a script somewhere in the world that was written by someone who looked like you, who spoke a language built like yours, who wrote it down, not knowing if it would survive. It survived. Go find it. Salamat. Terima kasih. Mabuhay.